Hannah Miller rushed across the sprawling campus of New York University, her bag slung over one shoulder, a coffee cup clutched precariously in her free hand. The mid-morning chill of October bit at her cheeks, but she barely noticed as she navigated the crowded pathways. Journalism classes were her passion, and she wasn't about to let anything, or anyone, make her late for her favorite lecture. As she slid into a seat near the front of the room, she noticed him, Ethan Carter. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, and he wore a leather jacket that seemed at odds with the neat stack of legal textbooks on his desk. She'd seen him around campus, he was hard to miss, but they'd never spoken. Today, however, he caught her eye and offered a lopsided smile that sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. After class, as she gathered her things, Ethan approached her. That professor's got a voice like a lullaby, doesn't he? Makes it hard to stay awake. He joked. Hannah laughed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. If you think that's bad, you should try sitting through an entire lecture on journalistic ethics. Ethan tilted his head, his smile widening. Maybe I will. You might have to help me stay awake. Though, that was the beginning of everything. Late-night study sessions turned into coffee dates. And soon, they were inseparable. Ethan's charm and ambition perfectly balanced Hannah's creativity and drive. They became the couple everyone on campus knew, their laughter and chemistry lighting up every room they entered. After graduation, life was a whirlwind of new jobs, shared apartments, and dreams of the future. Ethan landed a coveted position at a prestigious law firm, while Hannah started her career as a freelance journalist. Their schedules were hectic, but they always made time for each other. Every Friday night was reserved for date night, and every Sunday morning began with breakfast in bed. Their love seemed unshakable. They faced challenges together, Ethan's grueling hours at the firm, Hannah's struggles to secure steady assignments, but their bond only grew stronger. When Ethan proposed on a snowy evening in Central Park, surrounded by twinkling lights and the distant hum of the city, Hannah said yes without hesitation. The diamond ring he slid onto her finger sparkled as brightly as the future they envisioned. Their wedding day was a dream, set on a picturesque vineyard just outside the city. It was a blend of rustic charm and modern elegance. Hannah wore a lace gown that seemed to float around her, and Ethan looked dashing in a tailored navy suit. Friends and family gathered to celebrate the couple everyone believed was destined for a lifetime of happiness. Ethan's vows were heartfelt and poetic. Hannah, he said, his voice steady but emotional, you've always been my inspiration, my best friend, and the love of my life. I promise to honor and cherish you, to stand by you in every storm, and to celebrate with you in every joy. Hannah's voice trembled as she repeated her own vows, her heart full to bursting. Ethan, you've been my rock, my partner, and my greatest adventure. I promise to love you, to believe in you, and to build a life with you full of laughter and love. As they kissed under the golden light of the setting sun, surrounded by the cheers of their loved ones, Hannah was sure she had found her forever. The morning sunlight filtered through the curtains of their Brooklyn brownstone, bathing the room in a warm glow. Hannah stood at the kitchen counter, unpacking boxes from their move, humming a tune. Everything felt new and full of promise. But just 3 days after their wedding, that promise began to falter. As Hannah unpacked, a knock on the door interrupted her rhythm. Their neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Turner, stood on the stoop, a hesitant smile on her face. "Morning, dear," Mrs. Turner said. "I just thought I'd stop by and say hello. Congratulations on the wedding." "Thank you," Hannah beamed. "We're excited to finally settle in." Mrs. Turner hesitated, her smile faltering. "I don't mean to pry, but, is Claire staying with you too? I saw her coming and going recently." "Claire?" Hannah frowned. "I don't know a Claire." Mrs. Turner's expression shifted to one of concern. "Oh, well, she's been renting a room in the guest house for months. I assumed she was a friend of Ethan's." Hannah's stomach dropped. A woman staying in their guest house? Why hadn't Ethan mentioned this? That evening, she confronted him. "Ethan," she began, trying to keep her voice steady. "Who's Claire? Mrs. Turner mentioned she's been staying in our guest house." Ethan stiffened. "Oh, Claire," he said, brushing it off. "She's just a tenant. It's nothing." "Nothing?" Hannah pressed. Why didn't you tell me about her? Ethan sighed, his frustration apparent. I didn't think it mattered. She's just renting a room. You're blowing this out of proportion. But Hannah's unease grew. She began to notice subtle things, a familiarity between Ethan and Claire when they crossed paths. Hushed phone calls, and text messages that Ethan was quick to delete. One evening, while Ethan was in the shower, Hannah's curiosity got the better of her. She picked up his phone, scrolling through his messages. Her hands trembled as she read the texts between him and Claire, filled with intimate exchanges and plans to meet. Her heart shattered. That night, Hannah confronted Ethan. Her voice shook with anger and betrayal as she held up his phone. How could you? She demanded. You've been lying to me, cheating on me, with her? Ethan's face paled, but he quickly recovered, putting on a mask of regret. Hannah, I messed up, he said, his voice filled with practiced remorse. It was a mistake, a stupid, meaningless fling. It's over, I promise. Tears streamed down Hannah's face as she listened to his pleas. She wanted to believe him, to hold on to the love they had built over the years. After hours of apologies and promises, she reluctantly agreed to give him another chance. But in her heart, a seed of doubt had been planted. Hannah woke the next morning with an ache in her chest that no amount of deep breathing could erase. Ethan had left for work early, slipping out quietly like a man trying not to wake the ghosts he'd created. The brownstone felt emptier than ever. Despite the half-unpacked boxes scattered around, she wandered into the kitchen, her thoughts replaying Ethan's tearful apologies from the night before. His promises to end the affair had seemed genuine, but the betrayal lingered, gnawing at her trust. Was it possible to rebuild what they'd spent 8 years creating? The weeks that followed were a blur of strained conversations and forced smiles. Ethan made a show of being attentive, bringing her flowers, cooking dinners, and leaving sticky notes with sweet messages on the bathroom mirror. But the tension between them was palpable. Hannah couldn't shake the feeling that every kind gesture was a performance, a way to pacify her rather than a genuine attempt to heal their marriage. Months passed, and the cracks in their relationship were papered over but never truly mended. Hannah's journalism career kept her busy, offering a welcome distraction from the growing distance between her and Ethan. Still, there were moments of hope, small, fleeting instances where she thought they might find their way back to the love they once had. It was during one of those hopeful moments that Hannah discovered she was pregnant. She stared at the test in disbelief, her hands trembling. A mix of emotions flooded her, joy, fear, and an overwhelming desire for things to finally be okay. She wanted this baby to be the glue that held their marriage together. When she told Ethan, his reaction surprised her. He smiled, his eyes lighting up in a way she hadn't seen in months. We're going to be parents, he said, pulling her into an embrace. For the first time in a long time, Hannah felt a spark of hope. They spent the next months preparing for their new addition. Ethan attended doctor's appointments, helped paint the nursery, and even started coming home earlier from work. Hannah dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, their marriage could survive. But old habits die hard. When Hannah was 7 months pregnant, Ethan's behavior began to change. He started working late again, his phone always just out of reach. One evening, while folding tiny baby clothes in the nursery, Hannah's suspicions resurfaced. She couldn't ignore the pit in her stomach any longer. After Ethan fell asleep, she checked his phone. Her worst fears were confirmed. He had rekindled his affair with Claire. The texts were more brazen this time, filled with intimate details of their secret meetings. Hannah's hands shook as she read them, her heart breaking all over again. She confronted Ethan the next morning, her voice trembling with anger. You promised me, she said, tears streaming down her face. You swore it was over. Ethan's response was cold. I don't know what you expect. Hannah, you're always nagging, always suspicious. Maybe if you trusted me more, things would be different. His words cut deeper than she thought possible. The man she had once loved so deeply was now a stranger. His indifference a slap in the face. Hannah gave birth to their second child, a baby boy named Oliver, on a rainy September afternoon. The delivery was complicated, requiring an emergency C-section. As she lay in the hospital bed, exhausted and in pain, she looked at her newborn son and felt a glimmer of strength. But just 3 days after bringing Oliver home, Ethan shattered any hope she had left. It was late at night when she heard the sound of the front door opening. Ethan had claimed he was working late, but Hannah's instincts told her otherwise. Quietly, she followed him outside and watched as he got into his car and drove away. She hailed a cab and asked the driver to follow him. They arrived at a small hotel on the outskirts of the city. Hannah's heart raced as she watched Ethan meet Claire in the parking lot. Their embrace was intimate, their laughter carefree. It was as if Hannah and their children didn't exist. The sight broke her. She returned home in silence, her tears blurring the city lights. When Ethan came back hours later, she was waiting for him. "I'm done," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside her. "I want a divorce." Ethan scoffed. "You're overreacting again, Hannah. You're not going anywhere." But this time, she meant it. Ethan fought the divorce every step of the way. He refused to move out of the brownstone, made baseless accusations during mediation, and even tried to use their children as leverage. Hannah endured months of legal battles, the stress taking a toll on her health and her confidence. Even after the divorce was finalized, Ethan found ways to torment her. He spread rumors among their mutual friends, painting Hannah as a controlling and vindictive wife. Worse, he shared her phone number with Claire and other women he dated, encouraging them to harass her. One evening, Hannah received a call from a woman she didn't know. "You're the reason Ethan can't move on," the woman accused. "Why don't you just let him be happy?" The words stung, but Hannah refused to engage. She hung up and blocked the number, vowing not to let Ethan's manipulations control her any longer. It took 6 years for Hannah to find peace. Therapy became her sanctuary, a place where she could unpack the years of pain and rediscover her sense of self. Dr. Brooks, her therapist, helped her confront the guilt and shame that had weighed her down for so long. "You're not responsible for Ethan's actions," Dr. Brooks told her during one session. "You did everything you could to save your marriage. Now it's time to focus on saving yourself." Hannah took those words to heart. She poured her energy into raising Samantha and Oliver, creating a stable and loving home for them. She also rebuilt her career, landing a full-time position as a features writer for a prominent magazine. For the first time in years, she felt free. 10 years after leaving Ethan, Hannah stood in the kitchen of her cozy apartment, preparing dinner while Samantha and Oliver played in the living room. The sound of their laughter filled the space, a reminder of how far they had come. She had tried dating again, even meeting someone who seemed kind and understanding. But when the relationship didn't feel right, she chose to end it. Her priority was her children and the peace she had worked so hard to achieve. Hannah had learned to find joy in the simple moments, watching Samantha excel in school, teaching Oliver how to ride a bike, and savoring quiet evenings with a good book. Her life wasn't perfect, but it was hers, and that was enough. As she set the table for dinner, she looked out the window at the city skyline. The lights twinkled like stars, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there was always hope. Hannah leaned back in her chair as the warmth of the afternoon sun filtered through the windows of her favorite cafe. Samantha and Oliver were with friends for the weekend, giving her a rare moment of quiet. She sipped her coffee and reflected on how far she had come since leaving Ethan. The scars of her past were still there, but they no longer defined her. She thought back to the few dates she had gone on in recent years. There was Lucas Bennett, a kind man she met at a charity event. He was understanding, patient, and everything she thought she needed. But as they grew closer, she realized something important. Her peace and the stability she had built for her children were non-negotiable. Ending things with Lucas had been difficult, but it also reaffirmed her priorities. She was no longer willing to compromise herself or her family's well-being for the sake of a relationship. Love, she realized, had to come with respect, trust, and balance, none of which she had found with Ethan or anyone since. Despite her resolve, Ethan's presence still lingered in her life. His sporadic attempts to meddle, whether through snide comments at school events or passive-aggressive texts, were a reminder of the chaos she had left behind. Hannah had learned to shut him out, setting firm boundaries and focusing on her children instead of his antics. One evening, Ethan showed up unannounced at her apartment. He looked disheveled, his once pristine appearance marred by the toll of his own decisions. "I need to talk," he said, his voice a mix of desperation and bitterness. Hannah stepped into the hallway, keeping the door to her apartment closed. "What do you want, Ethan? You were always better at holding things together," he said, his tone accusatory. "I thought I'd be fine without you. But now everything's falling apart." Hannah's chest tightened, but not with sympathy. Instead, she felt the weight of years of manipulation and guilt attempts. "Ethan, I'm not responsible for your life anymore," she said firmly. "I moved on, and you need to do the same." He stared at her, as if searching for the woman he could once control. But Hannah's unwavering expression left no room for doubt. "Fine," he muttered before turning and walking away. As the door clicked shut behind her, Hannah exhaled deeply. She realized that for the first time, she felt nothing for Ethan, not anger, not pity, not regret. It was a small victory, but one that marked another step in her healing. One evening, as Hannah and Samantha sat on the couch watching a movie, Samantha turned to her mother with a thoughtful expression. "Mom, why did you and Dad get divorced?" she asked, her voice curious but gentle. Hannah hesitated, her mind racing for the right words. Samantha was old enough to understand more, but Hannah wanted to protect her from the darker truths of their past. "We loved each other, but sometimes love isn't enough," Hannah said carefully. "Your dad and I wanted different things, and being together made us both unhappy. I chose to leave because I wanted you and Oliver to grow up in a home filled with peace and love." Samantha nodded, her brow furrowed. "Did he hurt you?" Hannah's breath caught, but she met her daughter's gaze. "There were times when your dad didn't treat me the way I deserved to be treated," she admitted. "That's why I made the decision to leave. I wanted to show you and Oliver that it's okay to stand up for yourself and to walk away from things that aren't good for you." Samantha hugged her tightly, her voice muffled against her shoulder. "I'm glad you did, Mom." Hannah held her daughter close, tears pricking her eyes. In that moment, she felt a deep sense of validation for the choices she had made. As the years went on, Hannah continued to thrive in her role as a mother and a writer. Her articles on resilience and healing gained a following, resonating with readers who had faced similar struggles. She began receiving invitations to speak at events, where she shared her story and encouraged others to find strength in their own journeys. One evening, after giving a talk at a women's empowerment seminar, a young woman approached her. "Your story really inspired me," the woman said. "I've been in a toxic relationship for years, and hearing you made me realize I deserve better." Hannah smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. "You absolutely do," she said, "and it's never too late to start over." As the woman walked away, Hannah felt a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced in years. Her pain had become a source of strength, not just for herself but for others as well. One quiet evening, as Hannah sat on her balcony with a cup of tea, Oliver joined her. The boy had grown into a kind and thoughtful teenager, his presence a constant source of pride for Hannah. "Mom," he said, leaning against the railing, "do you think you'll ever get married again?" Hannah chuckled softly. "I don't know, sweetheart. I'm happy with the life we have right now. But if the right person comes along, maybe." Oliver nodded, a smile playing on his lips. "Whoever it is, they'll be lucky to have you." Hannah reached over and ruffled his hair, her heart full. "Thank you, Oliver." As the stars twinkled above them, Hannah felt a profound sense of peace. Her journey had been painful and tumultuous, but it had also brought her to a place of strength and clarity. She had rebuilt her life on her terms, surrounded by the love of her children and the knowledge that she was enough. And in that moment, she knew that whatever the future held, she was ready. Hannah's story became one of resilience and hope, a testament to the strength it takes to leave behind what no longer serves you and to embrace the unknown. While the wounds of her past would always remain, they no longer defined her. Instead, they became a part of her journey, a reminder of her courage and the life she had fought to create. As she watched Samantha and Oliver thrive, Hannah felt an unshakable pride. She had shown them the value of self-respect, the importance of love rooted in trust, and the power of starting over. And for Hannah, that was the greatest victory of all.